Hey guys, it's Vanessa. I'm here with the second part of my big wrap-up. This is 7 more books that I have to wrap up. We'll start with We Were Feminists Once. We Were Feminists Once focuses and explores on the ways that corporations and pop culture and the media in general use marketplace feminism to co-opt the message of feminism to sell things and to try to make us feel good without seeing any real change occurring from the top down or from the bottom up. So as much as we feel our hearts warm when we see like a girl commercials or when we see "this is what a feminist looked like" t-shirts on celebrities, these are not things that are necessarily going to change our world in a feminist way. She was one of the founding editors of Bitch Media, so in her worldview, when she got started in her work, she really believed that pop culture could make a difference when it comes to making feminism more mainstream. She thinks that that's still possible, but she kind of has seen how feminist messages have been corrupted and no real change has occurred in our society. So this book really checked me. It put me in my place as someone who has like retweeted feminist takedowns of something some random guy said. I think that yes, it's very important for feminist messages to be mainstream. You're not like a strange person for saying that you are a feminist in today's world, and that's good. For feminism to actually accomplish its goals, change has to occur when it comes to wage equality, when it comes to parental leave, when it comes to affordable healthcare. It's very easy for us, and myself included, to be distracted by popular culture, to be distracted by feel-good media stories and feel-good advertisements, and to think that things are changing when they really aren't. And she's not telling you don't consume any media that has anything to do with feminism because they're not doing the actual work. She's just telling you to be critical of it and to do things in your own life that are practical ways that you can change our society. I also really enjoyed some of the things that she said that I hadn't really thought about. Like she kind of took down the term empowerment, and she said that empowerment is one of those made up words to make it seem less intimidating and to make it seem less forceful, that women could have power. And she says that she is kind of against that term unless that term is being also used to talk about men, and she says that that's just not the case. We don't say that men are empowered, we say men have power. So why can't we say that women have power? Why do we have to say women are empowered? It's just kind of like a nonsense kind of word that was made up to make it seem okay that women have power, is what she's arguing. And I kind of really took to that, and I feel like I'm not going to be using that term any longer. A lot of this book was very approachable. The way that she writes is kind of rambly. A lot of the things that she talks about are things that I am well aware of because I am such a consumer of pop culture in general and of feminist messages in the media. So a lot of the things that she talked about, I know what she was talking about before she had to explain it really. So if you're someone who cares about these topics and is fond of pop culture, I think this book would be really good for you, and especially if you agree with me that you might be someone who takes in all these feel-good messages of girl power, without realizing that these corporations are trying to sell us something, whether it be like Dove products or Always pads or something. We have to be a little bit more critical. So just keep it in mind, Vanessa, that feminism is not meant to be fun. Feminism is not meant to be a feel-good thing. The things that feminism is trying to squash, is trying to alleviate, are things that are not fun to talk about. They are not things that are fun to actually do. So be always wary of feel-good messages. The next thing that I read was The Arrival by Shaun Tan. This book focuses on an immigrant moving, and multiple immigrants really. It does this in a very moving and beautiful way. The art is very quiet. There are no words in the entire graphic novel, which is not something that I've encountered in a graphic novel before. There was lots of symbolism, the way that the place looked. It sort of looked steampunk a little bit, and it had fantastical creatures in it. This is meant to show you when an immigrant moves to a new place, everything seems foreign and weird looking because it's not their home. I thought that that was a really clever way to portray that. This is a book that I feel like I could reread, and I should reread because I will take something new from it. The only real downside to this, I think, is the fact that I did not feel as connected to the characters because there were a lot of characters. I wanted to feel more for each character. Maybe this could have been helped by having dialogue, maybe this could have been helped by having more pages, but definitely if I reread it, I think I will take more from it. The next thing that I read was Deafo by Cece Bell, and this was a semi-autobiographical story of Cece Bell's childhood and her deafness. I've never really read a book about a kid with a disability for me to be exposed to a new experience. That was really great for me. I also really enjoyed the themes that were explored in this children's graphic novel, especially kind of how you feel about friends when you're that young, parents and boys and teachers. I really enjoyed the mother-daughter relationship, but my only real question was towards the end, as she was getting to know more of her classmates and she was being more accepted by her classmates. It made me wonder, was she really being accepted because of who she is, or was she being used a little bit? Maybe I'm being a little bit too critical about that, especially because I think this book did show us ways that children are malicious towards kids with disabilities, but it didn't truly feel to me like she had found her place to fit in the school. Maybe we needed her to meet more of the different kids in her class. Yeah, I don't really know what I feel about the end just yet. And I did think that this book was definitely more tailored towards younger audiences. My younger brother read it. He's 10. He really enjoyed it, and for me, I enjoyed it as well, but I feel like younger audiences would get more out of it, especially the way that it's told and the vocabulary that is used and the feelings and experiences that children have. It's something that they are actually going through at the moment, so I think it would connect with them a little bit more. The next thing that I read was Brain on Fire by Susannah Cahalan, a journalist who discovers through lots of trial and error and different doctors that she is suffering from a disease, a very rare disease, causing all kinds of strange symptoms that's very difficult for her to deal with and for her family to deal with. I thought the subject matter in this book was so fascinating and perplexing, especially because I never really read a book about diseases or like autoimmune diseases of this sort, especially one this rare. The first part of this book really reads like a nonfiction thriller. It's the author trying to figure out what is happening to her, what her family and friends are thinking as well. That was, I think, the most compelling part of this book. I read through the first 5 hours of it on audiobook on a drive down home. I couldn't stop reading it. The second half of the book is kind of the hospital stay, figuring out what is actually wrong, kind of the recovery of it, as much as you can recover from something like this. And she does this by looking at tapes of her stay at the hospital, also journals that she kept and journals that her mom and dad kept, as well as like interviews that she did with her boyfriend and her friends at the time. That was to me a lot less interesting. I understand why it's there and why it's important to be there, especially because it affected so much people who didn't have a name for what was happening to them. It exposed a lot of families who were dealing with the same kinds of symptoms to finally find a diagnosis. So I understand the importance of her story and the fact that she is so visible as a journalist. But to me, a lot of it felt repetitive and felt like filler and felt like her continuing to ask herself, you know, like, when am I going to be okay? When am I going to be back to my normal self? And her not really having answers because it's something that she hasn't, time has not elapsed as much for her to kind of see if her recovery is for real or what capacities of her are really going to return or not. The second half took a lot longer for me to read because I wasn't as fascinated. The last thing that I really finished was Forever in Blue by Brashares. This is the fourth and final book of this series. I know there became another one that we don't speak of, and I've already read spoilers too of what actually happens in that book, and I'm just not going to read that book. This conclusion I thought was really anticlimactic. I thought it was kind of disappointing considering how great the first three books were, in my opinion. I definitely loved being with these girls. It is really easy to read. I love the way that Brashares continues to splice their scenes, and I continue to enjoy the pacing of the scenes of all four girls. I think that's something that I want to see more in fiction when different POVs are being told. It kind of gives us all we need and then moves on to the next girl and continues her story as well. So while I enjoyed the writing, the pacing, the characters, I still was so confused by this plot line and what is going on with these girls, what they made them do. All of these plot lines were really predictable, tiresome, boring, been there, done that. and I just kind of wanted something else. The same things that were happening in the first 3 books were just reiterated here. I care zero about Costos, really. I care zero about the fact that B is so impulsive that she needs to be with an older man again. I care little about a pregnancy scare that like scares a girl into not talking to her boyfriend. We need communication here. Just going through this book was not as appealing to me because of all the plot lines that I didn't care to read about. They were resolved in the way that I was happy with, but it took a while to get there. And so many other things could have been done with these characters, I think. I definitely enjoy the first 3 books much better, and the second book remains my favorite. This is where it ends for me, and I really have valued my time with this series, and I can say that I've completed a series, which is not something that I can say often. The last thing that I tried to read that I actually ended up DNFing, and it's probably like my 4th or 3rd DNF of the year, so not something that happens often, that was Siracusa by Delia Ephron. I DNF'd this book at 80 pages. It was really not going anywhere for me. Considering how this book was sold, I thought that it would be for me. It has unlikable characters, something I like. The setting is in Italy, something I really like. And it follows a mystery. It follows, you know, affairs and married couples doing things behind their backs, which is something that I enjoy reading about. I don't see it in my real life. I think it's fun to read about. But this book was not doing anything for me at 80 pages, and I decided to just let it go and move on to the next thing. And that is it for everything that I have read or tried to read in probably the past month and a half. Thanks so much for watching my video. I will see you in my next one. Bye bye.